Hello and welcome to my Tech Talk, applying SRE principles for more resilient mental health. My name is Darius Kumari, and I'm both a product manager in tech who's been building an incident response and resilience platform for SREs, and also an individual who on a personal front faces the adversity of severe anxiety and depression. And today, I want to share with you all the parallels and insights I've learned both on my journey building a solution for site reliability engineers and learning how they work to improve the reliability of their services, but also personally, how individuals like ourselves can work to improve and strengthen our own mental health. Now, with a new year and the pandemic looking for another variant-driven wave, mental health continues to grow at the forefront of concerns and conversations, both inside and outside of the workplace. As a society, our work continues to shift largely from physical jobs to knowledge-intensive jobs. And that means we as individuals need to be very cognizant to create and protect a resilient mind to contribute and participate effectively in this information age. Now, in these recent years of the pandemic, people, systems, and digital services were pushed to their limits. Whether it was IT and SRE organizations scaling to meet the demand of a primarily remote workforce and growing portfolio of digital products, or individuals like yourself caring for the needs of yourself, the family at home, while simultaneously juggling the remote work, the remote school, and the many meetings. And so resilience in ourselves and the systems that were being managed had become more critical than ever. Sadly, an irony and challenge that I've observed, especially in the tech industry, is how we're treating our systems and services with greater attention to health than ourselves. And in many cases, it is due to our care and passion for customers, users, and the business. Now, the reality is, to be the best contributing member of our organization, to be the best for ourselves and our family, we need to effectively serve the world by serving ourselves and our own mental health. It's an unselfish act to foster our own productivity in a high-performing organization. An enduring team is one that is healthy and productive sustainably throughout the year and the many challenges that come with it. In this talk, we're going to look at 4 trends adopted and implemented by site reliability engineers for making services run more reliably, and reinterpret them as strategies for building resilience in our own mental health as tech and other industry professionals. Specifically, today I'm going to tell you how 1. You can define and measure reasonable success, both for your systems and your health. 2. How you can proactively improve the systems and your own resilience and tolerance for when these adverse events and these challenges occur. 3, I'm going to teach you that when the events do occur, how you can respond more effectively, whether it's your system going down or a mental health challenge. And finally, we're going to learn how we can consider systems theory and look at ourselves and our systems very similarly to understand that by adjusting the inputs into the system, we can help the system produce more favorable outputs, whether that's a more reliable service or a happier and healthier self. So with these 4 tips, let's take a look at what ourselves and SREs have done to improve the health of systems. So step number 1 on our mental and system health journey is to define and measure what reasonable success looks like. And to begin, I'm going to take us back to this notion of system theory. And in a closed system, the output can be measured directly or inferred as a function of the inputs into that system. While machines and your technical systems will rely on sensors, metrics, events, and logged information provided to observability and monitoring systems to constantly check and measure the values, humans, ourselves, were less discrete and predictable and significantly more complex in how and what we perceive. But our emotional state, mental health, and our reactions to those are the outputs that we experience as part of our own systems, our body systems. So how do we figure out ways to understand and measure the health of both our IT systems and our own systems as people? And equally importantly, are we setting realistic expectations for ourselves and those systems based on what the data has shown is reasonable to strive for? You may find that there's times you need to recalibrate those expectations to reflect the reality of the world we live in. But let's take a start, as I will throughout today's Tech Talk, beginning with the focus on the systems. What are the practical implications for measuring success for systems? Well, as mentioned, observability solutions will use a slew of different monitoring approaches, from synthetics and logs to heartbeats and pings, to assess the system's current health level in relation to the service it provides. A core job within site reliability engineering is to establish monitoring and observability so that you can get insights on how your systems are performing against your intended goals, or as they're referred to, service level objectives. These service level objectives represent the desired level of performance for your service and, more importantly, the users consuming those services. So how do we measure criteria for health of services in this modern digital age to ensure performance against the objectives? Well, a common set of dimensions used in the industry is referred to as valet, or volume and traffic that the service receives, the availability, the latency, the errors, and the tickets. And the second set of dimensions is commonly referred to as Google's four signals. Could be the latency, the traffic, the errors, and saturation. In all these cases, modern implementations generally aggregate data observed from these technical metrics into larger, abstracted service health dashboards or status pages, which routinely have their own public targets for the health and availability of the service. It's important to remember that, yes, you can set up your monitoring and observability. Yes, you can be collecting your data among these dimensions that we just mentioned, like valet or the golden signals. But the reality is the reality, and so if you can't change any of your inputs or the tolerance of the system, and you're struggling with an output from the system that doesn't meet your intended targets, it's time to revisit those SLOs and expectations. That extra 9 of reliability, the extra 15 minutes of mean time to resolution, the extra second of latency you want to shave off might mean the difference between a feasible objective and a constant, unachievable goal, with no major difference to the final end user or stakeholder. As is been quoted on many talks in the SRE industry, if your mobile device runs at 99.9 reliability and you have an app that runs on mobile, there's really no need to invest in an extra 9 beyond that 99.9, because who knows if it's your app or the mobile device anyways. And so that first piece of advice is gaining the observability, gaining the visibility into the health and output of your system, ensuring it's meeting the expectations and requirements of your business and users, and in revisiting those goals and requirements to make sure they are feasible and reachable in the context of your organization. Now let's change the gears and take a look at the practical implications as it turns to measuring success for people, for ourselves, for our mental health. As humans, our goals of resilience roughly translates to maintaining and maximizing our own mental health, our mood, and our well-being as that successful outcome. And when we look at the dimensions of observable data points that, we get for ourselves, there are a number of indicators that we can get for our mental health and well-being. Those namely including sleep, exercise, weight, mindfulness, heart rate, and emotional state and mood, to name a few. And we can consider these as inputs into our system, with the output being our ultimate mental health, our mood, our happiness. And so tech and knowledge workers, in general, that industry is very sedentary in nature, unfortunately. So tracking these inputs around movement especially is key to building resilience by encouraging activities like walking, jogging, or running outside. And so how can you track all these data points? We don't have, logging software we can deploy. Well, something we do have available to us is fitness wearables, something like a Fitbit or a Apple Watch, which can help provide monitoring to track many of the above health metrics and goals you may be setting for yourself. So data points can help you understand where you are today and help you set a realistic and achievable objective for where you want to be tomorrow and how you can improve over time. And as mentioned, you may need to adjust those expectations and goals the same way we talked about with systems. So if you were at, let's say, 0.7 reliability or availability, instead of trying to jump to 0.9 overnight, focus first on 0.75 and work your way up. If you were at a weight of 300 and you wanted to get to 250, you would focus on 295 before turning all the sights onto 280. It's about those incremental steps and improvements on those core inputs to get those desired outputs that we're monitoring that we consider success for mental health. Now, another dimension that you'll find a lot with these apps is things like heart rate, things like activity and activity minutes. And so identify what those health objectives are that you want to hit across those different dimensions that we can measure on ourselves, and set objectives for daily and weekly minimums in these key areas like sleep, the steps that you took, and the activity you're doing. Treat each dimension as your own service level indicator for your own mental health and take it as a metric that you want to protect. You can use a few weeks to identify, what levels work, what goals are practical if you need to collect some data up front. It's very understandable. And you may find that, with more or less of the same activity, you need that to achieve the outcome you desire. So for example, you may find you need more mindfulness minutes, more yoga, more meditation, more guided breathing to get the level of calm you desire. And apps, as mentioned, like Fitbit, like these wearables, like an Apple Watch, they're going to help you on that health journey by giving you that visibility into those metrics, those health metrics we discussed, and ensuring that you're aware of where you are today and you can start setting those goals for yourself to get to a better mental health tomorrow. And with all that data being collected by something like these wearables, keep in mind that a more traditional approach is simply journaling. Going and taking the time throughout the day to log your mood, to log how you're doing, and so that you can see patterns over time and potentially identify what activities are beneficial or what activities or days might be more difficult than others. And so with that visibility now and those definitions of success defined for both your systems and yourself, let's talk about the 3 things that you can do next on actually improving on those outcomes and improving on the actual resilience of both your mind and the systems. And so activity number 2 and step number 2 in building your own mental health, as learned from SRE, is to make the system inherently more resilient and tolerant for when those problems do occur. So taking it back, to control theory and systems theory, if we think of our system and we think of the inputs coming in, if the inputs are held constant and we want to make a change to the output, then we're going to have to change something in the system. Make it process those inputs more efficiently, make it more resilient to keep delivering the outputs we desire. So one of the ageless desires of any technology or SRE organization is to become more proactive in ensuring service availability. The best solution to incident response isn't just automating the resolution to issues as they occur, but rather to actually preventing the issues from happening in the first place. When it comes to your own health, this is the same thinking and why it's so important to invest in a healthy lifestyle, is to get ahead of those health issues before they occur. Applying that system theory approach to maintaining the desired output involves improving the system's tolerance itself. So given that static input, what changes can be made to the system to improve the observed output? In many cases, we can't fully enforce or dictate the types of interactions or inputs entering our service. Whether it's a spike in a volume of users, network interruptions, or in our personal lives, events that happen with friends, family, personally, there are a number of variances in the inputs that are affecting our systems. And so while we can't control those events, we can become more resilient by allowing ourselves to more efficiently handle the variance. So let's start with systems. How can we practically improve the resilience of our systems? Well, the best way, as we mentioned, to stop the phone from ringing, the pager as they would say, is to make the service and the CI/CD pipeline, which is all the code coming in that's contributing new features to that service downstream to become resilient enough for it not to have an issue in the first place. So there's an opportunity to include SRE earlier in your plan, build, run paradigm of software and service delivery. To act as a consultant advising the larger development teams so that code and services are built for that run in production environment from the start, right? We're basically taking SRE and moving them downstream where that code is being deployed that could originate and stem the issue in the first place. And so growing also CI/CD, that's continual integration or continual deployment, automation also means opportunities to run tests, spin up staging environments that mirror production more closely, and identify and prevent bad code deployments before they happen and hit our production environment. With principles also of chaos engineering as introduced by SRE, you can also purposely introduce issues into the system to ensure that you have the resilience and the right infrastructure and process in place to withstand it. Now, another piece of proactive ops is to add automated and self-remediation scripts based on the logic and types of events and alerts your observability is throwing. So you don't need to wake up from a 2 a.m. on-call call, just to run a simple fix-it script. You can have the system do that on your behalf. And even if that level of automation is too mature for your organization, you can document what those steps are in a playbook or runbook so that an individual, an SRE, looking at that issue in the future simply needs to follow through this known set of steps to improve the resolution for that issue as it comes in. The final proactive recommendation here comes as no surprise, but it's to invest time and resources into making the hardware more, reliant, upgrading the hardware, or patching and reducing tech debt in the software. It's time to evaluate for those low reliability systems if the number of calls and pages and low availability is worth that one step back, two steps forward approach to making the investment in the code base or in the physical hardware to improve on those dimensions. Now, for people, we unfortunately can't just swap out, a piece of hardware or write a quick piece of a code and fix the issue overnight. With people, when we talk about improving resilience, it's all about improving those dimensions we were talking about earlier that we can monitor, right? With mental health, it's common that stress, anxiety, and depression are going to feed into each other. And as a result, building resilience means ensuring your stress levels are tolerable and that you can proactively defend against other mental ailments by keeping it in control. And so it's important also to have an internal bearing on the sensitivity of yourself to where your mental health is on a day-to-day basis. And so that means looking and understanding, as we mentioned, your sleep, your irritability, your mood, and your energy levels as indicators for mental health. If we begin experiencing those observable outputs of stress, depression, anxiety, or other unfavorable states, then we must see what we can do to make ourselves and our systems more resilient from producing those types of outputs. As discussed, a big item for mental health and physical health is exercise, mindfulness, and sleep. Since these are easy to monitor, you should definitely be aiming for at least 30 minutes of cardio, 30 minutes of weightlifting, 15 minutes of mindfulness, and 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Now this is going to change, depending on who you are. You might need more, you might need less, but these are key indicators that you can continue to develop day over day to proactively build up a stronger mind. Mindfulness and breathing techniques, yoga and meditation can be things you can pick up through mobile apps, things like Calm or Headspace, or from local in-person classes to help build that mental calm. On a similar note, and I'll highlight this, going to therapy and talking to a therapist, clinical psychologist, can help offer a grounded outlet to not only grow yourself in your perception, but acquire the mental tools and techniques for building resilience and mindfulness techniques when issues do occur. I can't stress enough the benefit if you're struggling with mental health issues of seeing and talking to a therapist. You're essentially creating a playbook for yourself to follow for your own mental success. That playbook contains when during the day you need to get that exercise in, when you want to go up for a walk and take a break throughout the day. When are you going to go and meditate? When do you want to spend time for family, for social interaction? All important. What's the best time for these activities to occur? Morning, lunch, afternoon, right? Only you can identify those time slots. And so planning and time management ahead of time is key to proactively carve out the blocks you need to grow your mental health through those activities. So building in that resilience means proactively scheduling that time off, not only throughout the day, but at a macro level, scheduling time off for vacation, for breaks, to disconnect and recovery. And so if you know you have major release milestones or a major event that's going to be more stressful, take some time off afterwards. Utilize your PTO policy at work, take the time off as needed, or, utilize your own network, your friends, your family, if you need some help with your own day-to-day activities. You can also time box the hours you want to be online to ensure better work-life balance, scheduling intermittent breaks throughout the day, switching between, let's say, a sit-down and stand-up desk, and also taking advantage of the myriad of online resources that are available today on topics of mental health, anxiety, and depression. And so there's a lot of online accounts, let's say on Instagram, like Anxiety Healer, Anxiety Wellbeing, DLC Anxiety, and so on, not to mention the numerous books and TED Talks on these topics of anxiety and depression that can help you refactor your mentality when it comes to this. So we're effectively monitoring and identifying where we are with our system and our health. We've identified ways to proactively improve the resilience of the system. And now we're going to talk about the inevitability of when issues do occur, when we have those down days or our chemicals are imbalanced and we're really going to take some time to recover. We need to figure out how can we respond more effectively when issues do occur. So no matter how much automation, redundancy, and proactive steps we take towards preventing outages and degradation, those unexpected and uncontrollable events in environments and lives will inevitably lead to negative issues that are beyond our control. And when this happens, effectively responding is key to getting back those systems to full health as quickly as possible. An effective response may even need additional individuals beyond just ourselves, who can lend specific expertise, capabilities, and ways to augment our system's recovery. And importantly, no person or system should act as a single point of failure, and redundancies should be identified not to cause disruption when either gets impacted. So what makes for effective response? Usually effectively responding means, one, detecting that there is an issue in the first place, so identifying it as quickly as possible. 2, diagnosing why is that issue occurring. 3, taking action to resolve that issue to get back to where you need to be. And then 4, ensuring remediation and preventing that issue from happening again, right? We can improve resilience after that by learning from what didn't work for us in the past, using a blameless post-mortem mentality, which will then help us identify action items around what we can improve in the future to make that outcome better the next time. And it's important, both, for systems and for ourselves, not to find anger and fault, when we think back on what went wrong, as issues will be inevitably, and we need to treat them as growth opportunities as we move forward. So let's start again with those practical implications of responding effectively from a system perspective. Rapid response means having the appropriate monitoring and alerting in place so that you can involve the right individuals as quickly as possible, right? Having that visibility, when something goes wrong, you need to know. And ideally, you're detecting that with those metrics you're monitoring from step 1. But sometimes if you had a visibility gap, monitoring gap, you might get in user reports and tickets around an issue that you need to work on. And so service relationships with associated on-call teams for those services can help you identify who to bring in from a technical and business stakeholder perspective, or even what customers to notify when those issues happen. Understanding the various services a team supports and the services it depends on from other teams can be visualized in a service dependency map to understand upstream and downstream impact and root cause. So this map drives faster remediation by making those downstream changes, alerts, and incidents affecting your upstream services easier to identify as potential causes. And the on-call schedules and automated notifications linked to, let's say, escalation policies. So if someone doesn't pick up the phone, someone else does. Make sure that there's always someone accountable to immediately jumping in to diagnose and resolve the issue. That being said, you don't want to call everyone for everything. If everything is a P1, nothing is a P1. So reducing alert fatigue by ensuring each alert is meaningful when these issues do occur is a primary goal of incident response. If an event is not predicting or indicating an actual service degradation or outage, then an alert shouldn't be sent. Rather, that event should just be logged. Something that's tracked in the system, reported on, shown on your dashboards and graphs, but not something that you need to notify and take someone's mind share and attention for. And so when alerts get too noisy, those existing monitoring thresholds need to be adjusted, right? You need to make a change, fix them, make them a bit more strict, update your observability metrics thresholds, and routinely review the alerts to make sure that threshold is needed. Or maybe, you might find you had a visibility gap and you need to add additional monitoring as the better fix there. And so you may want to also implement granular logging and tracing for future troubleshooting if your time to diagnose took long. And automated alert grouping is a great way to reduce noise, repeated alerts, while providing context into other areas of the environment that might have related symptoms. Now, once those issues get resolved, as we mentioned, the last step is the postmortem. The postmortem process after incidents, big piece of site reliability engineering, is meant to help the team identify what happened, why it happened, and how or what will be done to mitigate and prevent it in the future. The contents of postmortems are commonly desired by stakeholders, customers, and leadership. And postmortems will help make the system more resilient by minimizing or preventing the issue from happening again. And that can be done through process, technology, or software change. So a lot of important pieces on responding effectively by bringing in the right people, by having the visibility, upstream, downstream, the service dependencies, logging, tracing in place, and ensuring you go back with those postmortems to ensure there's always visibility and action items are handled to improve the system. Now, for people, we can also improve the way we react and make it more effective. Issues with mental health, especially for tech workers, usually manifest as burnout, anxiety, and depression. Taking time off is a good way to help provide immediate time to recover and work on mental health issues, but ensure to go back and try to identify and fix the root cause of why you felt you need to take time off to begin with. Running any system over capacity or at max capacity for a prolonged period will result in exhaustion and burnout. So make sure to identify when you're going above and beyond your limits so you can have that conversation with your manager and who you need to scale back down. When you run into larger and recurrent mental health issues, you also want to bring in the right people. The same way a tech team brings in experts for networking, security, and so on, a database team, you may need to bring in a mental health care team, which could be friends, family, your significant other, a therapist, a psychiatrist, or your regular MD, which are all resources that want to see you succeed and help build your mental tolerance. Now, anxiety really is a problem that manifests very similarly to noisy alerting, where the body's notifications to potential threats are much too sensitive, spiraling out of control, and there's too much noise in the system. Almost every alert is interpreted as a high priority, and that's causing severe alert fatigue as you run out of energy listening to all the danger warnings. So when these types of issues, strike, these panic and anxiety attacks strike, yes, there's short-term solutions like medication, also a long-term solution. There's breathing exercises you can take, like box breathing, performed by a lot of militaries. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold between the two. Or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding techniques, where you use your senses, things you can see, things you can smell, things you can touch, things you can hear. But both of those are just the resolve step, right? They won't solve the root cause of the issue. They'll just help you rebalance and recenter when issues happen. And so usually those core of the issues coming from an unhealthy lifestyle or a chemical imbalance. That's the latest thinking in the mental health space, is chemical imbalance theory. And so for fixing the root cause in those items, you would look to medications to rebalance the chemicals alongside lifestyle changes that again focus on those key inputs exercise, sleep, nutrition, and making sure that you are inputting the right things into your system. And while we don't have, again, automated logging or tracing, we can take time to reflect and journal on our stress levels and emotional states over time to identify those patterns of what is working for us, what's not working for us. And in addition to that journal and reflection, that's that type of internal postmortem you can take for yourself after experiencing major dips in your mental health to identify why are you doing so. Is it too many hours, late nights, early mornings, exhaustive activities, too many extracurriculars, too high of expectations you set for yourself, to try to prevent it from happening again. Actions you could take, is again talking to your manager, significant other, or family about what you can do to help augment and reduce activities. And those action items should help you achieve your goal with reducing those negative outputs and improving the positive inputs, identifying the wellness routines you need to succeed, and carving out that associated time. And that whole notion of inputs and outputs will bring us to our fourth and final key piece of advice that we can learn from SRE for mental health, which is after you have your visibility, after you improve the way your system acts by improving tolerance, after you improve the way you respond when issues happen, is trying to improve the inputs that actually come into the system and influencing those so that they are favorable. So, while the previous recommendations are ones you can take to improve resilience and response to the system, this next set of recommendations is around controlling the inputs that the system experiences. In this case, we want to attempt to modify the inputs to result in a preferred output. We want to reduce the chance of resource exhaustion or other system problems, whether due to usage spikes or increased demand on ourselves, and create a healthy and stable environment to ensure that our systems operate at tolerable and expected levels. Now, if a system is operating with repeated issues and unreliable health, we've established that things won't improve without introducing some form of change into either the inputs or the system itself, right? If your system's inputs are constant and your system doesn't change, you shouldn't expect the system to simply begin improving, given chance, right? That's your classic science experiment, is you expect the same result. Only by introducing positive change into the system or its inputs can we reliably expect a consistent improvement in the observed outputs. So just like a large IT project, these changes also won't happen overnight. Building resilience will be a combination of our previous discussions around improving system resilience, responding effectively, and maintaining the healthy inputs over a sustained duration. So when it comes to your systems, how can we practically adjust inputs for systems to be more favorable? Well, great news in the SRE space from a technology perspective is container and dynamic cloud-based technology and scaling offers opportunities to spin up additional applications, web servers, load balancers, etc. that can flatten usage spikes, flatten traffic spikes, and help improve fallback when outages on primary interfaces do occur by adding that dynamic redundancy. By effectively scaling and balancing the load, you can prevent overwhelming inputs to the system. By utilizing also microservices architecture and that migration to the cloud, you can compartmentalize all the different logic and functionality and easily add capacity and redundancy where needed. And that's done through common things like Kubernetes, for example, and the management that comes automatically with that. Now, if you have known seasonality or event-driven spikes, major release, announcement, seasonality, these actions will also cause inputs like traffic to fluctuate. And so you can plan ahead of time what you want to do with that increase in usage and what you can do to help improve your expected capacity. So understanding the inputs in terms of your go-to-market, as well as your development and product release plans around the organization, whether customer-facing or employee-facing, can help you understand and forecast those input changes, those usage changes that are going to impact your system. Proactively addressing these inputs with additional capacity, staggered releases, that concept of the error budget, which we'll talk about in a second, will help ensure smoother system load. So while changes have the intention of improving a system, it is very well known in industry that changes are one of the largest causes of incidents and issues to our systems and our resilience in environments. And that comes from both planned and unplanned changes. So getting visibility and control into your development and release pipeline will help anticipate what's going on. Modern SRE operating philosophies tend to introduce an error budget which punishes low quality code. Similar principles like a karma score that incentivize engineering teams and engineer to develop high quality code and features, otherwise they can't ship additional features. Visibility into the release and change pipeline, or as we discussed earlier, improving that CI/CD visibility earlier on, as well as the GitHub or development history, will help uncover configuration changes that could be causing those negative inputs into the system, right? That change could be that input that's causing the unexpected outputs. Now, automated decision-based rules and approval policies that you can put into your CI/CD pipeline can streamline what goes through. Automated testing, as we discussed earlier, spinning up staging environments and having that full automated test suite running will help you make a more resilient system and ensure those inputs as changes will result in usable features. Now with people, it is also again a little different, because when it comes to managing inputs for mental health, the latest literature around this whole chemical imbalance theory encourages activities and lifestyle that promotes the right positive chemicals in your brain. So these chemicals are some of the core inputs we experience in our brains, and we want to prioritize receiving those right inputs. And they could include dopamine, which we can improve with the right sleep, completing simple tasks, listening to enjoyable music; oxytocin, which we can get from hugging someone, human contact, physical touch, holding a partner or pet; serotonin, which we get waking up in the morning, going outside, getting sunshine, going for a walk, a jog; and endorphins, which is strong exercise or things like listening to comedy. And so prioritizing doing those activities and those right chemicals while also reducing negative inputs, so bad chemicals coming from our stress and fight or flight responses in our nervous system like cortisol and adrenaline, we can help reduce those by managing our stressors and inputs. So we want to do that by taking change around the responsibilities or stressors we have to reduce those, whether that means offloading work, saying to no to new demands and requirements, or even stepping down, reducing our own expectations and goals to make sure we have a workload that works for us. And while I won't go in depth in terms of things like healthy food or specific diets to follow, it is also noted that having a good set of meals, routinely healthy meals, fresh, diverse, with the right nutrients, protein, carbs, vegetables, probiotics, that lack excessive fats and preservatives found in fast food, will also help, as a lot of the chemicals are actually begin in the stomach. And so on that note of what to intake and not intake, also be mindful of stimulants like alcohol or caffeine near the evening, as they will impact your sleep, which will impact your mental health and your resilience. And so another last thing I'm going to comment is negative inputs could be negative thoughts that we experience in our systems. And those negative thoughts can lead to more negative thoughts that kind of spirals us in a habitual or a negative loop of stress and anxiety. And so something we can do is simply relabel those as neutral labels, things like feeling, thinking. Instead of having the stressful thought, instead of feeling something that could be wrong, and reinterpreting that as extremely negative, which leads to more stress, you replace those labels with simple neutral terms: feeling, thinking. And that will help calm and break those negative loops. So that was our 4 key pieces of advice, taken from site reliability engineering trends and reapplied to our own mental health, to ensure that we're building resilience and tolerance in not only our systems, but importantly, our minds and ourselves. We talked about how you can define and measure reasonable success. And for systems, you have your valet and your golden signals and a number of other dimensions monitoring and logging and observability gives us. But for ourselves, we could use things like journaling and Fitbits and wearables that help us get an idea of our wellness metrics. And we could set goals for ourselves and track how we're doing on those goals. We could improve the system's resilience and tolerance by improving our lifestyles, by improving the activities we do around wellness to proactively ensure we have time to accomplish those activities. And when issues happen, we can make sure we respond with the right resources, the right team of people, and the right techniques to not only fix an issue in the moment, but the long-term root cause. And finally, we talked about how in any system, when we've done everything we can, sometimes changing the inputs is what's needed to make sure favorable inputs come in and we maintain the right set of outputs. And so in conclusion, will improving resilience through these proactive changes make a difference when it comes to our system's tolerance, our own tolerance, and our inputs? Well, speaking for myself, I have reduced stress and seen notable changes in my own mental health by prioritizing the lifestyle that focuses on those positive inputs and carving out the time needed to achieve those inputs. Remember that investing in your mental health is investing in your productivity and impact in today's day and age. And also remember that mental health challenges can easily be hidden. It's very hard to observe from an external perspective, just looking at someone. And so it's important to be supportive now more than ever of your coworkers, family, and friends. And your organization can experience the same efficiency of resources and systems if enough time is focused on improving that resilience proactively, as opposed to playing that constant role of the firefighter in the business. Organizations we've seen adopt DevOps and SRE principles in droves as they embrace the digital transformation over the pandemic. If you're interested in learning more around thoughts and considerations for becoming more efficient and resilient on the operations side, well, you can check out the incident response solution I've been working on. I'll put the link in the description of this video to help improve the resilience of systems and people. And for yourself, your fitness and your health, I have a peer, Manjeet Singh, who has written a great book, Fitness and Wellness for the Modern Human, that I recommend checking out as well. If you have any feedback or comments on things you've seen work great, both either on the system side for improving resilience or on the side of yourself and your mental health, feel free to share those in the comments below. And I wish you all a strong and resilient year as we face the adversity that comes next.